Righto, Mitch. I'll give this to you. If I'd have had to type it out, you would have got it in about half a page. If I'd had to handwrite it, you wouldn't have been able to read it. But anyway, we'll go as far as a title. You could call me Greg McNamara. I'm certainly not a disgruntled punter. I know that I'm a bad punter, so that's why I don't do it that often anymore. But I consider that I've probably had a bit of experience just with the gambling industry, more from afar than hands on. But your first question: what was the on-course bookmaking industry like when I first got involved? Well, it wasn't the open cry, which is what they have in the UK still, where they call out the odds and things like that. But when you went to a race course in Australia, as your grandfather and father probably would have been able to tell you, you walked in and the odds were on the board. They weren't in decimal currency. They were in the old-fashioned style. So instead of $5 on the tote, $5 would be 4-1, because what they've essentially done is that the dollar that you invest goes into that $5. So you're getting $4 for your dollar plus the dollar you put on. So that's the $5 if you happen to back a $5 winner. As far as the local races were concerned, the only option that you had was, as far as increasing your odds, you're able to barter with the bookmaker if you happen to know him, and everyone else had a horse up at 5-1 and he had him at 4-1. Well, you could work with him to and try and negotiate a little bit better price. Similarly, if you had a horse in the race, what you would possibly do, or a smart bookmaker would do, would be to come to you before the race and say, well, look, Mitch, you've got this horse in the second race. What price do you think you'll start at? And he could give you whatever money you wanted to put on it, and then he could lay it off at a lower price and perhaps make a little bit of money on it. A little bit hard to describe in today's language, but anyway, that was what it was. Now, your A part of question one was the only alternate. Well, the only alternate to the bookmakers in the early days was what they call an SP, a starting price. So when you got the paper the next day, it would have at what price that horse started. So if there was 50 bookmakers at Flemington and they all averaged 5-1 the winner, well, that was a horse that was the price that was put up. So that was the starting price, and their benefit was that they'd be in every pub and cafe and wherever around Australia. They weren't paying any tax. The bookmakers, they've always had to pay tax on their turnover, which that led to quite a part of their demise. Anyway, I would suggest, because with in the modern day, the online bookmakers and that, they only pay on their profits. So that's quite a big difference. Question number 2: do people working in this field have a consistent level of success in today's day and age? Well, largely from the punter's perspective, it depends on their level of knowledge, obviously. But there's that much information out there: track reports, time trials, sectionals. What's the horse is either looking well or not looking well, or so it in days gone by, it was virtually just somebody with a pair of binoculars looking over on a race course and doing the times himself to know whether the horse was up to it or not. So that depends on the level of success. Number 3, if I knew anyone that took up a career as a bookie, was it ever a job that could support them and their family? Well, there were certainly career bookmakers, more so in the cities. The main thing that they needed was turnover. Usually in the bush, you just couldn't get enough turnover, so you would be a weekend bookmaker. Of course, in those days, and you sort of looking back over the last 50 years and some of your questions, well, that would depend, like they'd be a weekend bookmaker. They'd probably work all week and then either lose their money or make their money on the weekend. But usually what the career bookmakers, if they were fair income and of a reasonable size, they usually resorted to SP. They had to do that. Then they had to go overseas in order to get the telephone betting, and of course now they're probably online bookmakers. But certainly any local bookmaker would need to have another job. So question 4, what do you believe the biggest factors of the gradual fall of the on-course bookmaker revenue? Well, of course, of recent times it's been the lack of options. A bookmaker can normally only bet win or place. There's an odd one that'll bet on doubles, that'll have multiples, but of course with betting nowadays you need trifectas, quinellas, and of course you just couldn't hold enough money to offer those options. The other thing that probably limited the bookmakers when it comes to a place bet, the tradition was that unless there was an odds-on favourite in the race, so in today's parlance, a horse paying less than $2, you had to bet a quarter of the odds. So if you had the horse, if there was a horse at, in today's language, $2.20, and you had a horse at $10, you had to bet a quarter of that, which was $2.50 or $1.50 the place. So, but anyway, so that was another thing that sort of perhaps like with the modern day totes, they can put whatever price they want on. We don't know how they work out their odds. So in other words, to give a current example, you've got Winks at $1.10, and Who Shot the Barman came second in a race that pays second and third, and they've got it at 16 to 1. It should pay $4, whereas a tab might only have it at $2.20 or 30 or something. So they protect themselves. Question number 5: are on-course bookmakers becoming redundant in Australia? Certainly in sports betting they are, because they're not allowed to bet on sports. They just can't do it. And obviously, if they're on course, they'd have no ability to do it because the result of the game wouldn't be known. And you can imagine if you had a ticket on the Essendon Collingwood game and it started at 4 o'clock and you wouldn't be able to collect, you've left the course before that event's finished. Question number 6, is there still a future for on-course bookmakers despite their modern day demise? Certainly the older generations still like the on-course betting. Unfortunately with everyone else, and perhaps myself included, you can bet on the phone. You don't have to bet here in Australia. If you're big enough, you can bet around the world, and still get the same odds. But it's obviously it's a diminishing, and perhaps just a little bit more of a spectacle. So I think you'd find most of the major on-course bookmakers would have an online or certainly a telephone betting service. Question number 7, what does the future of sports betting look like? Sports betting, obviously, when you see the scandals, especially around soccer, tennis, it depends on trust. So, if you can pick a sport where they can't rig it, well, obviously there'll be a big future. But I think for everyone else, they'll get the mug punters in, but other than that, the big punters, will probably stay away from it. Question number 8, how would you describe the last 50 years, 1967 to 2017, of Australian sports betting? Not so much the last 50, I think that'll be going back too far, because most of the sports betting would have just been between single people. But the last 10, it's all obviously come a long way, when you can have all ups on AFL and soccer and and rugby league and all other sports. Bet on the cricket, it's just, it has come an enormous way. Don't know how far it's got to go, but again, go back to question 7. That just depends on trust. In relation to number 9, if I know of a personal story, I suppose I do. I've known enough bookmakers and bad punters over the time. As I say, generally, if you're a bookmaker and you're going to make a career of it, you probably have to follow the SP, after the racetracks, SP, and then offshore. They forced a lot of the bookmakers offshore, and now they're back living, locally, and they got online betting, and it's just a different world. But obviously, in Australia, you've seen a lot of the overseas bookmakers come in, with Ladbrokes and Paddy Power and all the different ones come in and buy Australian enterprises. And no doubt they've done it around the world. But remembering that perhaps Australia would be more gamblers, and because of their proximity to Asia, would have attracted more gamblers than a lot of other countries, especially through Europe. But anyway, if you go through this, and if you need any other queries answered, I'd be only too happy to do it. But anyway, see how this suits your job. Thanks, Mitch. All the best. And as I say, I look forward to when you're a top-line sports journalist, and I'll be able to quote that I've helped you along the way, and more so just perhaps get a couple of tips. All the best. Bye.